I'm talking about the entirely legitimate question of whether Donald Trump could be compromised by the Russian government.
The evidence here is that Senator Menendez enriched himself, made decisions not for the public good, but for the private good, meaning his bank account, and that he took bribes, that he took, we saw gold bars, that he took cash, and that he took that money in order to affect investigations, in order to do things like use his position as a public official and give a foreign government, the Egyptian government, sensitive information.
It's more than a legitimate question. It's the natural question that comes to mind every time we learn more about the links between President Trump, his associates, and the Russian government.
The way this case started was wrong. The way it was investigated was wrong.
This goes to the heart of what it doesn't mean to be a public servant. Being a public servant means that you run for office or you're appointed in order to make decisions to benefit your constituents.
We learned that following one of the meetings with Putin, Trump phoned a New York Times reporter to argue that Russia did not interfere in the 2016 election.
The way it was prosecuted was wrong, and the way it was tried was wrong as well.
Once again, carrying the Kremlin's water in direct conflict with the entire U.S. intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So,
you know, it's interesting. Robert Mueller was a god to the Democrats, was a god to them until he said there was no collusion. They don't like him so much right now.
Anonymous, nameless, faceless individuals on a website can drive that type of story into the mainstream. But that's what they've done successfully. Now nobody can find them. No one ever met them. No one ever talked to them. But that's where we're at.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
End quote. This comes a day after another Menendez supporter, Benedetto Bajica of Elmwood Park, pleaded guilty in Newark federal court to conspiring to make illegal campaign contributions to the senator. And all this happens as Menendez appears to be poised to become chair of the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
The collusion delusion is over.
And as the ranking member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, there have to be certifications by the Department of State in conjunction with the Department of Defense that says that Ukraine is meeting its responsibilities and goals as it relates to dealing with its fight against corruption.
Dr. Salomon Melgen's West Palm Beach, Florida office was raided this week. Medicare and Medicaid fraud investigators and FBI agents carried out several boxes of material. The FBI will only say it was conducting, quote, law enforcement activity.
As of last year, more than 46,000 cases were pending before it, many of them among the most complex and challenging cases in the nation.
The prosecution started this morning's arguments by saying again and again to the jury, use your common sense when coming to a decision. Courtroom observers are saying the government is making a compelling case that Senator Menendez, in essence, acted as his friend and co-defendant's personal U.S. senator by accepting gifts and campaign contributions in exchange for helping Dr. Salomon Melgen obtain visas. He intervened in a port dispute and a $9 million Medicare dispute.
But the Miami Herald reports the FBI agents who raided Dr. Melgen's South Florida offices were looking for his financial records and alleged links to underage prostitutes.
I've told you how I feel about the source of this stuff. It's really very, very typical for the source.
And while the Menendez camp stands firm in its denial, last April, the senator himself pulled no punches when I asked him what should happen to those Secret Service agents, the ones who allegedly got involved with prostitutes in Colombia.
If the facts are true, they should all be fired.
Since you're attacking us, can you give us a question? No, Mr. President-elect.
Go ahead.
Mr. President-elect, since you are attacking our news organization, can you give...
The very essence of our democracy, the very essence of the checks and balances for the American people, they're eviscerated. They're gone. Our government has dramatically changed.
It goes to a jury. What do you think?
Well, I think that there's going to be a tough battle that's going to go on here about the definition of what a bribe is, especially after the recent Supreme Court decisions. And the judge did a very good job at instructing the jury. And it's just going to be a simple fact is, was this a quid pro quo, or was this being given as part of a friendship? The government did a very good job putting on its case, and the defense did a good job defending it. It's up to the jury now.
Deadlocked on every single count. This judge went one extra step, very, very rare, by the way, by talking to each juror individually. That almost never happens. And he was obviously satisfied and came to a point that simply said, okay, enough is enough. They are never going to reach a verdict. Keep in mind here, too, they had a different juror as of last week. Then this juror had a prearranged vacation and so had to leave. So they had to start over again this week. So when they come back on day one of this week and say we can't reach a verdict, I don't blame the judge for sending them back and waiting. Day 4, big different story.
Well, now back to the mistrial declared today in the federal bribery case against New Jersey's U.S. Senator Bob Menendez. John Yang is back with that.
Total exoneration, complete vindication.
So my gratitude to all those New Jerseyans and Americans from across the country who believed in me and helped me mount my legal defense against the millions of dollars spent by the overwhelming weight of the federal government.
John, the defense argument was that these men have been friends for 25 years, that yes, Solomon Melgen flew Bob Menendez to the Dominican Republic dozens of times on his private jet, and yes, he paid for a Paris vacation once, and yes, he gave $700,000 to the Democratic Party in 2012, earmarked for Menendez's reelection, but that's not necessarily a bribery scheme.
I've told you how I feel about the source of this stuff. It's really very, very typical for the source.
Key argument from Menendez's defense team was that the prosecution could not match specific gifts to specific actions taken by Menendez, particularly because Menendez and Solomon Melgen were friends for decades. Can you elaborate on that?
When Ukraine, even unwillingly, gets involved, it's not about doing what is right. It is about ultimately taking care of their business, their needs. When a foreign government is interfering in our elections, it's not about you, America. It's about them.
That sensational story about Senator Robert Menendez supposedly patronizing prostitutes in the Dominican Republic seemed to unravel this week. It was days before Menendez was up for re-election when the conservative website The Daily Caller said that 2 women, it would not provide their names, alleged that they'd had sex with the New Jersey senator.
And they were not supposed to be leaking to the press during the early stages of their investigation, which violated my rights to a fair process. I've made my share of mistakes, but my mistakes were never a crime.
Now, I can't prove that the Daily Caller is wrong in saying that its reporter spoke to different prostitutes, but the FBI has found no evidence in this case, and the caller hasn't proven that case. Based on these latest reports, it's clear that someone was out to smear Menendez and to use the media in doing so.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So
now, most news organizations shied away from the unsubstantiated allegations, which Menendez vehemently denied. The Washington Post this week reported on affidavits in which one prostitute said she was paid to lie about Menendez. Here's Post reporter Carol Lenig.
I've been in enough trials to understand that a little bit of what you do is you have a flash over here, so you're not looking what the other hand is doing over here. And that's largely what I heard the president's defense team do. Create flashes over here so you weren't thinking about the essence, the core of the House manager's case, which is rather compelling. I want to hear that any evidence that the president genuinely cared about rooting out corruption. I want to show me the facts.
1 week from Tuesday, voters will head to the polls for New Jersey's midterm primaries. The only statewide race this cycle is for the U.S. Senate. Senator Bob Menendez is running for re-election after his bribery case ended in a mistrial last year. In January, the Justice Department announced plans to retry Menendez, but promptly reversed course just 2 weeks later.
I've learned through this process a lot about our system of justice. It is truly a system of justice you can afford. I understand why so many Americans feel that justice is elusive. But for supporters from across the country who believed in me, who knew who I am and what I stand for, I could never have afforded the millions of dollars this case has cost.
And after 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead.
A lot of controversy around President Trump everywhere, as you know, but he's not very popular in New Jersey. It hasn't helped that New Jerseyans are going to pay more in federal taxes as a result of the tax reform law, that he's withholding money for the Gateway Tunnel.
That connects New Jersey to New York, yeah.
That's correct. I think that's going to buoy Democrats like Menendez and many congressional candidates quite a bit.
Thank you, New Jersey! And thank you, Lord, for getting me through everything I've been through. I've also learned about the incredible weight and power of the federal government and how it can crush you if it wants to. It gives me an even greater resolve to make sure that there is a check to that awesome power. Because where do I go to? What office or department of the federal government gives me back the past 2.5 years of my life?
Yes, because I was watching America shift from a country that really worked for working people, a country that was really about opening opportunities, an America that invested in kids like me. I went to a commuter college.
And again, David, it kind of ties into not only the Menendez trial, but the Awan brothers, Fusion GPS, as you were talking about earlier. The media has been colluding to cover up some of these scandals that are really breaking on the Democrat side of things. But
when you have a foreign government, either because they want to or you elicit them, get involved in our elections, guess what? When Putin decides that he wants to get involved in our elections, it's not because he cares about America. He cares about his business and Russia.
just to tie in a little bit to what Rachel was saying, I mean, here you have somebody that is being brought up on charges of bribery and corruption, might miss these votes. Here's the kicker, though, David. For him to actually be removed, if he chooses not to step down, if he's convicted and doesn't step down, it would take 67 senators to vote to remove him from office. And so then that becomes the question, will there be Democrats who will allow a felon, if he's convicted, to stay in office?
That costs $50 a semester, an opportunity that's not out there for kids today. And what I've watched over time and what I talk about in this book is how this country works better and better for the corporate interests, for the executives, for the billionaires who have the money to influence Washington, to make it work for them. And as a result, we're getting to be a country that works better and better for fewer and fewer and kicks dirt in everybody else's face. I'm in this to fight back.
Give us a chance.
Your organization
you are
is
attacking
terrible.
our news organization.
Your organization
Can you give
is
us a
terrible.
chance
Let's
to ask
go.
a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can
Quiet.
you state,
Quiet.
Mr. President?
What's the most surprising thing that you've learned about Senator Menendez's activities?
I think that his involvement in something called the U.S. Spain Council, which is an organization that was started by then Vice President Gore in 1996. It's composed of multinational corporations, lobbying outfits like Greenberg Traurig.
Go ahead. Can you state
She's
categorically,
asking a question.
Mr.
Don't be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No,
give
I'm
us
And he is the chairman, honorary chairman, all over the website. And a former staffer of his, who is Pedro Pablo Permoy, who worked at Greenberg Traurig as a lobbyist, is the president of this association.
Impeachment has only personified what this administration has done. If they can drive the ability to have no witnesses for Congress to do oversight, no documents for Congress to do oversight, added to the fact that they believe that this administration believes it can go to war without the approval of Congress, and then take one of Congress's main roles, which is to provide money, and decide that they're going to transfer the money.
I think that what's happened is we've been so overwhelmed by the corruption in politics in general that we've forgotten that that's really not the question, Mike. The issue is the Senate Ethics Committee, which is looking at this, is looking and trying to enforce a standard which is the appearance of a conflict of interest.
So it may not be illegalities, but the Senate has its own rule of ethics.
I'm not going to give you a question. Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect, that's not appropriate.
Today is a victory of hope over hate, for facts over fiction, for inclusion over division, for hard work over ripping people off.
We do have breaking news, an indictment, a federal indictment with major implications in Washington and abroad. New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez and his wife have been indicted on corruption-related charges. Menendez is the powerful chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He and his wife are accused of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes in exchange for the Democratic senator's influence. What's more, this is the second time in the past 10 years that Menendez has faced charges like this. We are getting new details.
Here's my plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all. And corruption it is.
And new pictures from this indictment, including gold bars. CNN's Kara Scannell outside the federal courthouse in New York following this all. Kara, what are you learning?
New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez is resisting calls for his resignation after being charged with several corruption-related offenses by the Justice Department. Menendez and his wife are accused of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes in exchange for the senator's influence.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
This is the second time in the last decade Menendez is facing corruption charges.
And prosecutors say the bribes included gold bars, cash, home mortgage payments, and a luxury vehicle. Menendez denied the accusations and responded to calls for his resignation, saying he is, quote, not going anywhere. CNN's Kara Scannell has the latest.